It was a bright afternoon in the small town of Elmwood, the kind of day that reminded folks of simpler times, back when drive-in diners dotted the highways and kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on. The air carried the scent of fresh burgers and fries from Millie's Diner, a retro spot with a neon sign that flickered like it had since the 1960s. For those of us who grew up in that era, places like this evoke memories of first dates, jukebox tunes, and the innocent thrill of youth. But on this day, the scene outside the diner held a darker edge, one that tested the bonds of human kindness. Clara sat on the warm pavement, her blonde hair falling in waves around her tear-streaked face. At 16, she had that fresh-faced look of a girl still navigating the world, dressed in a simple blue sweater that hugged her slight frame. She clutched a half-eaten burger in its white wrapper, the juices staining her fingers, but she barely noticed. Clara was deaf, born that way, and she had learned early on to read lips and gestures, to find her place in a hearing world. Today, though, the world felt cruel. She had tripped while carrying her food, spilling her drink and drawing unwanted attention. Now, she cried silently, her shoulders shaking, wishing she could disappear. Nearby, 3 teenage boys hovered like shadows, their laughter cutting through the air. The leader, Ryan, 17 with his sun-bleached blonde hair and sharp features, wore a red and white varsity jacket emblazoned with a bold V for victory, though there was no victory in what he did. An American flag patch on his sleeve seemed out of place amid his mockery. He held his phone up, filming Clara's distress, his mouth twisted in a grin as he egged on his friends. "Look at her, guys, total mess," he said, his voice loud and taunting, knowing she couldn't hear but hoping the vibration of the words reached her somehow. Beside him knelt Jordan, 16 with curly brown hair that framed his boyish face, his eyes sparkling with misguided amusement. He wore a plaid shirt, casual and unassuming, but his chuckles fueled the moment. Next to him was Tyler, also 16, with straight dark hair and a lean build, dressed in a gray tee, joining in the jeers. They were typical high school kids, the sort who might have been you or me back in the day, testing boundaries without thinking of the hurt they caused. In our 50s and 60s, we remember those years, the peer pressure, the need to fit in, but we also know how quickly such actions can scar a soul. The boys circled closer, their phones out now, capturing every sob. Clara glanced up, her blue eyes wide with confusion and pain, signing frantically for them to stop, but they only laughed harder. The diner patrons inside glanced out the windows but stayed put, perhaps too afraid to intervene or too jaded by life's busyness. It was a moment that could have passed into forgotten cruelty, the kind that lingers in victims' hearts for decades. Then, from the edge of the parking lot, came Vince. In his mid-50s, he cut an imposing figure, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face framed by slick-back graying hair, and arms covered in faded tattoos that told stories of a rougher past. He wore a black leather vest over a dark shirt, patches sewn on from his biking days, and his belt buckle gleamed under the sun. Vince was a single dad, raising his teenage son alone after losing his wife years ago. He had pulled up on his motorcycle for a quick bite, the rumble of the engine still echoing as he strode forward. Something in Clara's cries, silent but profound, caught his eye, reminding him of his own boy's struggles with bullies back in school. Vince approached with measured steps, his boots crunching on the gravel. The boys didn't notice him at first, too absorbed in their game. But when his shadow fell over them, Ryan looked up, his smirk fading. "Hey, man, this ain't your business," Ryan said, trying to sound tough, but his voice cracked just a bit. Vince stopped, his dark eyes scanning the scene. He saw Clara on the ground, vulnerable and alone, and the boys with their phones, turning pain into entertainment. In that instant, memories flooded him, the 1970s, when he was their age, running with a crowd that picked on the weak to feel strong. He had been on both sides, the bully and the reformed, and life had taught him the hard way about regret. "Put the phones down, boys," Vince said calmly, his voice deep and steady, like a father addressing wayward sons. Jordan and Tyler exchanged glances, lowering their devices, but Ryan held firm. "We're just having fun. She can't even hear us." He laughed again, but it sounded forced now. Vince knelt beside Clara first, ignoring the boys for a moment. He signed gently, his son had taught him basic signs over the years, asking if she was okay. Clara looked up, surprised, and nodded through her tears, wiping her face with her sleeve. Vince helped her to her feet, handing her the burger with a reassuring smile. "You're all right now," he mouthed clearly, his expression warm. She managed a small smile, sensing his kindness. Turning to the boys, Vince stood tall. "Fun. Is that what you call this?" His tone remained calm, not yelling, but firm, the kind of voice that commanded respect without force. He paused, letting the words sink in, remembering how his own father had once pulled him aside after a similar incident. "I was like you once. Thought making someone cry made me big. But let me tell you something from a man who's seen a few decades, life's too short for that kind of empty thrill." The boys shifted uncomfortably. Tyler looked down at his shoes, Jordan's cheeks flushed. Ryan tried to play it off. "Whatever, old man. We're leaving." But Vince stepped closer, not threatening, just present. "Before you go, hear me out. I'm a single dad. Raised my boy alone after his mom passed. He got picked on too, for being quiet, for not fitting in. Kids filmed him once, spread it around school. Broke his spirit for a while. But you know what? He grew up strong because someone stepped in, showed him he wasn't alone. That's the wisdom time gives you. Every person you hurt is someone's child, someone's heart. And one day, you'll look back and wish you chose kindness instead." Vince's words hung in the air, evoking those nostalgic lessons from our own lives, the talks around the dinner table, the regrets we carry into adulthood. He shared a story from his youth, about a deaf friend he once defended on a summer day much like this, at a diner not unlike Millie's. "We were all kids then, full of fire and no sense. But that moment taught me acceptance isn't weakness, it's the real strength. Human connection, it's what gets us through the tough years." Ryan's face hardened at first, but as Vince spoke, something shifted. The boy's eyes welled up, memories of his own absent father surfacing, the loneliness he hid behind bravado. Jordan thought of his little sister, how he'd feel if someone filmed her pain. Tyler remembered a time he was the target, the shame still fresh. Tears began to slip down their cheeks, not from fear, but from the raw truth hitting home. "I'm sorry," Ryan whispered finally, turning to Clara. He signed awkwardly, mimicking what he'd seen online, but the sincerity shone through. The others followed, their apologies genuine, born from that dramatic turn where confrontation met compassion. Clara nodded, her tears drying as she saw the change. Vince clapped Ryan on the shoulder gently. "Good. Now help her inside, get her a fresh burger. And remember this day, it's how you grow." As the group moved toward the diner, the tension eased into a quiet understanding. Vince watched them go, then mounted his bike, the engine roaring to life like a promise of better tomorrows. In Elmwood, on that sunny afternoon, a simple act reminded everyone that bullying fades when acceptance takes root, and human connections bind us all. For those of us in our 50s and 60s, stories like this echo the wisdom we've earned. Kindness endures, regrets teach, and every moment is a chance to make things right. It's the gentle rhythm of life, pacing us through joys and sorrows, leading to deeper bonds. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Iski complete banadu.